Lewis and Clark are often spoken as one name, which feels strange because two separate young minds shared the same long uncertainty, standing at the edge of a country that felt loudly confident while they themselves carried quiet questions. Their early years did not announce greatness, since curiosity arrived mixed with doubt, and the habit of watching landscapes slowly formed before the habit of commanding people ever felt comfortable. Each learned early that maps pretended to know more than they truly did, and that blank spaces invited imagination, while also whispering warnings to anyone who listened carefully enough. Fame would later bundle them together, yet before that closeness felt uncertain, like two different rhythms trying to learn whether they could walk without stumbling. Neither felt entirely at ease in polished rooms of authority, because formality asked for certainty, while their instincts kept pulling toward questions without quick answers. Youth sharpened their sensitivity, since being young meant noticing contradictions, such as how confidence could sound loud while understanding stayed quietly unfinished. Writing became a private anchor, as notes allowed thoughts to slow down and become visible, turning confusion into something that could be examined rather than feared. Crowds never erased their sense of solitude, because even among companions, attention often drifted toward the land beyond the voices. They noticed how leadership did not always belong to the loudest speaker, but often leaned toward the one who listened longest before responding. Trust grew cautiously, shaped by observation rather than promise, as each learned to respect the other's different way of thinking. The world beyond familiar borders felt less like an enemy and more like a complicated sentence waiting patiently to be read. Small moments mattered deeply, including quiet evenings when plans felt less solid than hoped, and stars offered perspective without explanation. Humor slipped in gently, often through understated remarks about human certainty when compared to rivers that refused straight lines. Their shared purpose began forming before the journey truly began, rooted not in conquest, but in curiosity mixed with responsibility. Questions multiplied faster than answers, yet neither felt discouraged, because uncertainty itself became a kind of motivation. They noticed how preparation required patience, and how impatience created errors disguised as confidence. Observing animals, weather, and shifting terrain trained them to accept that understanding grew gradually rather than dramatically. Internal tension surfaced quietly as ambition wrestled with caution, each insisting it alone could ensure survival. Authority felt heavy even before it was fully carried, because decisions affected not just outcomes, but people who trusted them silently. The idea of moving west stirred excitement and unease, since movement promised discovery while threatening comfort. They learned to read silences as carefully as words, especially when silence revealed fear, curiosity, or resistance. Youthful imagination filled the unknown with possibilities, yet discipline reminded them that imagination required grounding. The land already felt alive in their thoughts, long before their feet touched it, shaping expectations that would later be challenged. Responsibility arrived gradually, settling into routines that demanded attention without applause. They sensed that history often simplified beginnings, ignoring how much hesitation lived inside first steps. Private doubt stayed mostly unspoken, carried alongside hope like hidden weight. Friendship matured through shared reflection rather than dramatic gestures. Learning together sharpened humility, since mistakes belonged to both and demanded shared correction. They grew accustomed to listening more than announcing, allowing landscapes to introduce themselves. Their journals reflected not confidence alone, but the fragile process of forming it. Imagination remained active, imagining paths that might exist beyond visible horizons. Sensitivity sharpened leadership, teaching them that care often prevented danger before it appeared. They sensed how observation created belonging where ownership could not. Each day of preparation felt incomplete, yet necessary. The country behind them felt familiar, but unresolved. Ahead, the unknown waited without invitation or reassurance. Their inner worlds expanded alongside outer expectations. Uncertainty slowly transformed into resolve without losing its questions. Movement became less about destination and more about attention. Trust deepened through repeated listening. Silence offered guidance when words failed. They accepted that not knowing everything was part of the task. Their partnership found balance through difference rather than sameness. Expectation pressed closer as departure neared. Reflection slowed time even as anticipation sped it up. The threshold approached quietly, curiosity held steady. Thus, part 1 ends with two young explorers standing in preparation rather than arrival, carrying sensitivity, doubt, and imagination together, ready to step forward without yet understanding how deeply the journey would shape them. Momentum gathered not as a trumpet blast, but as a steady breath, because once movement began, the land demanded attention every hour, and leadership shifted into a quieter form shaped by listening, correction, and patience rather than grand commands. Days stretched into sequences of observation, where rivers argued with maps, hills resisted expectations, and each adjustment rewrote earlier assumptions, teaching them that progress depended on flexibility more than stubborn confidence. They discovered that decision-making felt heavier in motion, since choices now carried consequences measured in fatigue, safety, and trust, all of which followed silently behind each step forward. When disagreements surfaced, they unfolded slowly, shaped by differing instincts, yet those contrasts sharpened judgment instead of breaking unity, because respect had already been practiced before pressure arrived. The environment spoke constantly through wind, water, and silence, and learning to interpret those languages became as important as speaking to companions who watched their leaders for reassurance. Humor reappeared in careful observations, especially when expectations fell apart, revealing how nature politely ignored human planning without any sense of apology. Night offered reflection rather than rest alone, as thoughts settled into journals where uncertainty transformed into learning instead of fear. Leadership evolved into an act of service, since guidance required protecting morale while admitting limitations that no single person could escape. Small successes mattered deeply, such as finding passable routes or moments of calm, because they confirmed that attention and humility could solve problems pride could not. Fatigue tested resolve, not through drama, but through repetition, as days required renewed focus long after excitement had faded into routine. They noticed how trust among the group grew stronger when honesty replaced bravado, creating resilience that no speech could manufacture quickly. Landscapes widened their inner worlds, forcing old beliefs to stretch until they either adapted or quietly fell away. Occasional fear sharpened perception, reminding them that courage was not the absence of doubt, but the ability to continue thinking clearly while doubt remained present. Responsibility lingered during every pause, since leadership never stepped aside, even when silence seemed peaceful. The journey reshaped ambition into stewardship, transforming goals into commitments that included people, knowledge, and respect for unfamiliar spaces. Moments of interrupted planning, as beauty arrived unexpectedly, demanding acknowledgement before schedules could resume. Errors occurred without ceremony, yet correction followed without blame, strengthening collaboration rather than weakening confidence. They learned that discovery did not announce itself dramatically, instead appearing through accumulated attention and patience. Communication required balance, as clarity prevented confusion, while restraint preserved trust. Adaptation became instinctive, taught by conditions that changed faster than predictions. Personal pride softened gradually, replaced by an understanding that survival favored cooperation over individual brilliance. Observation extended inward, as emotions were noted, managed, and respected, rather than ignored until they became disruptive. Progress measured itself quietly through endurance rather than speed. Silence occasionally felt instructional, allowing thoughts to settle into better decisions. Unexpected kindness from unfamiliar people challenged assumptions carried from earlier certainty. The group's cohesion reflected leadership that valued inclusion without sacrificing direction. Questions persisted without urgency, coexisting with action rather than delaying it. Confidence matured through repeated experience, losing its sharp edge while gaining depth. Nature demanded negotiation instead of control, shaping behavior through consequence rather than instruction. Learning accelerated under pressure, proving that difficulty could refine understanding. Routine offered stability, even as surroundings changed constantly. Reflection remained essential, preventing movement from becoming mindless advancement. Leadership now felt shared, supported by collective awareness. Moments of doubt arrived less often, yet remained welcome as signals to re-examine choices. The journey carved perspective into memory, reshaping expectations without erasing wonder. They recognized how exploration altered the explorers as profoundly as the maps. Purpose clarified not through destination, but through responsibility sustained daily. Endurance revealed strengths previously unnoticed. Attention replaced urgency as the dominant rhythm. Observation guided adaptation once again. The land continued teaching without pause. Trust deepened steadily. Understanding expanded unevenly yet surely. History began quietly forming behind them. Their inner world stood altered. Thus, part to close is not with a finish, but with an ongoing movement, where Lewis and Clark advanced shaped by humility, observation, and shared resolve, carrying lessons still unfolding as the journey continued forward.